And I think we're good.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kent Wong. I'm the director of the UCLA Labor Center, and I'd like to welcome you to this segment of Labor's Voice. This is a joint produced program between the UCLA Labor Center and the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. And especially during these critical times, we wanted to use this as an educational venue to talk about the extraordinary work that labor unions and community partners are doing right here in Los Angeles in the midst of the pandemic, but also more broadly to change the movement for racial and economic justice here in Los Angeles, throughout the state of California, and across the country. Tomorrow marks the 5-week deadline to Election Day. And the theme tonight is Countdown to the 2020 elections. Many people have said that this is the most important election in our lifetime. And so we think that it is so critical to highlight the work of the LA County Federation of Labor and unions and community organizations here in Los Angeles, because the labor movement has done an extraordinary job in changing the political landscape here in Los Angeles and in the state of California. So joining us this evening will be Hugo Romero and Michelle Bertinelli from the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. We will also be joined by my good friend and colleague, Lola Smallwood-Cuevas, who was the founding director of the Black Worker Center and is launching an exciting new program for the Center for the Advancement of Racial Equity through the UCLA Labor Center. And our final speaker will be Monica Thammarath, who is the national president of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, as well as a leader within the California Teachers Association, the largest union here in the state of California. And so the focus is on Countdown to Election 2020. And we will be focusing on some of the critical issues that will be appearing on the November 3rd ballot. As all of you know, tomorrow marks the first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. We will be hopefully encouraging people to organize viewing parties and ways of generating interest to turn out the vote. And throughout this evening, we will also be sharing ideas about ways that each and every one of you can get involved. The way that the Los Angeles labor movement has been able to build political power is through mobilizing our most precious resource, and that is our members and community allies. And at this critical juncture, with 5 weeks to go, we really are calling on each and every one of you to please get involved. Please help us turn out the vote for November 3rd and to get involved in ways that we can ensure a victory on November 3rd, 2020. And with that, I wanted to first welcome Hugo Romero. He's with the political department of the LA County Federation of Labor. He used to be with us at the UCLA Labor Center, and he's done extraordinary work to build the labor movement both here and in Orange County. And he's been anchoring some major political campaigns through the years that he's been at the LA County Federation of Labor. So the first question to Hugo is that this is a critical time when labor usually has rallies, they have door-to-door mobilizations, they have ways of bringing people together. And we can't do that in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of the prohibitions on large gatherings and the social distancing. So what is the Los Angeles labor movement doing at this critical time to mobilize the vote?
Hi, good evening, Kent, and good evening to everyone watching, of course. It's great to be here with you, Lola, Monica, and of course, my colleague, Michelle, to discuss this very critical topic of how to get involved in the countdown, as well as the 3 major propositions. So as you mentioned, right, it looks different. COVID flipped everything over, and the way we do field program in politics is no different. We've been capitalizing on technology, on the virtual worlds. So everything we can do, we've tried being innovative, as well as trusted systems, right? So phone banking, more important than ever, and making sure folks have the ability to both call whenever they have free time through different links and virtual formats, and as well have folks through the dialer, right? I remember when we first got rid of paper lists in 2018 for canvassing. When folks were canvassing, it was a new divide, but it worked effectively, right? And no different this time. I think COVID forced us to try new models, and folks have been adapting with Michelle and the rest of the team at the Federation under Ron's leadership. Just this weekend, we had over 120 shifts volunteering for different campaigns, whether it be presidential or our locally endorsed candidates. So we're very pleased. And, we've also been innovative in creating a safe produced outdoor phone banking program at the Federation on weekends for folks who can't do it virtually. So we've turned our parking lot into outdoor phone banking with physical distance, and as well as texting. So, and one thing I will share is that we have a new app in partnership with a program called Outreach Circle to try to do relational organizing, which I'll be happy to share in the chats, to make sure that peer-to-peer messaging is done effectively and communicate labor's message from one union member to another.
That sounds great, Hugo, that the LA County Fed has really adjusted to the challenges that we face with voter mobilization and is trying out new ways of reaching voters and ensuring a good turnout. Now, historically, communities of color and young people have been underrepresented when it comes to participation in elections. So what are the particular things that the LA Fed is doing to make sure that communities of color and young voters are mobilized?
So one of the things COVID has really exposed, Kent, to workers of color and young workers, and we've seen public opinion shift, is on unions. Getting out the message through all the forms I mentioned, and this is one thing Ron's been honing in on, getting the union message across on the benefits of union and collective bargaining agreements. So I know the UCLA Labor Center actually produced a report on young workers, for instance, that 6 out of 10 young workers would join a union and be happy to if they had the ability to do so. So promoting that union message in all our campaign material, and exposing corporations for the exploitation of workers that they take part in, and sending that message across through all the channels we have access to, has been critical, right? Because it's been young workers, it's been workers of color who are most hurting through this crisis, and historically, as you mentioned, underrepresented. And we've been hard at work to make sure that we communicate with them and target them, to say that, these are the candidates, these are the issues that workers across LA County are focused on, committed to improve the lives of workers, but also make organizing, right? Because a lot of the time, we don't just elect people to elect people. We elect people to make sure that they are labor champions, and that includes facilitating the process for workers to have the right to organize and stand with workers in whatever union campaigns they engage in. And so building out that message has been critical, and that's one thing we've been honing on through this is, yes, we are targeting get out the vote, but we're also educating on the benefits of the workers. In fact, my colleagues in the organizing department are running a parallel campaign through this that we've covered here, right, on public health councils. And all this is really showing the strength of workers and educating really on the importance of uplifting workers' voice. And so we're just committed to doing that through our electoral process, but also with an eye on organizing.
I'm glad you've really raised the link between politics and policy, because it's not just about electing candidates. It's about making sure that policies are being advanced that represent the interests of workers. And so the work of the LA Fed and other unions to fight for public health councils have been so critical to ensure that the workplace is safe when we have hazardous workplaces because of the COVID-19 crisis, and where greedy corporations have been placing their workers on the front lines at great risk. Another major policy initiative has been the demand for recall and retention for those workers who have been displaced by the pandemic, to make sure that when the economy improves, that they will get rehired. And so corporations won't use the pandemic as an excuse to bust unions and to lower wages. So I know that the LA Fed goes through a very elaborate process in making recommendations with regard to the critical issues. And I know that we have a lot of ballot initiatives coming up in the November ballot. So how has the LA Fed prioritized which of the ballot initiatives to work on?
Yeah, so, locally, for instance, we have a 2/3 threshold for any endorsement. Anything that gets an endorsement requires 2/3 of the unions involved in the LA County Federation of Labor. For the propositions, of course, this is a collaborative, it's a statewide election. So working closely with California Labor Federation and all our statewide brothers and sisters in labor and state councils, and making sure which ballot initiatives we're going to prioritize. Locally, of course, Prop 22, making sure no on Prop 22, yes on 15, and a yes on 16. All really under the equity lens, right? Making sure that workers are getting their fair shake, whether that's 16 or 15, and making sure corporations pay their fair shares. And no on 22, making sure that corporations don't get, like Uber and Lyft, don't get special breaks and make their own loopholes, spending a disgusting amount of money.
I'm really glad that you highlighted those three, because we will have speakers address them tonight. So Prop 22, the one that Uber and Lyft and other gig corporations are spending millions and millions of dollars to try to evade labor laws and to try to rip off their workers. So I was hoping you, Hugo, could talk about Prop 22 and why that is so important for workers here in California. And then I'll be calling on other speakers to talk about Prop 16 and Prop 15 later. But let's talk for a minute about Prop 22. Who's behind it, and why are they spending millions to try to push this through?
Right. So companies like Uber and Lyft and DoorDash have spent over $180 million, Kent, the most expensive.
$180 million. You think that they could pay their workers a decent living with the money they're spending on this?
Absolutely. And all to cheat workers and avoid labor law, right? And, from everything from their misleading claims about worker lenses, we've all, been in an employment situation where and you as the UCLA Labor Center know how polls can be misleading, right? They've been sharing this very misleading polls on the workers' choice and talking about workers' choice, but really this is about continuing to exploit their workers. And at the end of the day, they're refusing to provide benefits that are already guaranteed under law. The labor movement with partners, but the labor movement really cared, made sure AB 5 passed. And now Uber and Lyft are spending a ridiculous amount of money to make sure that they have special benefits. I hate to say it, but, just like the president, and you saw the New York Times report yesterday, think they are above the law and can, skirt the law. And that is just simply not the case. And so we are committed on making sure that no on 22 is the message that is disseminated across the state. That's why Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the Democratic Party, and really everyone who's committed to equity have endorsed the No on 22 campaign.
I'm glad you talked about the scandal around the president's taxes, because here the vast majority of American workers pay more taxes in the federal income tax each year than the president has. And for years and years and years, he paid no taxes whatsoever. So we have a very similar dynamic playing out here in California, where the UCLA Labor Center has actually done research on gig workers, on Uber and Lyft drivers, and have documented how they're getting ripped off by these wealthy corporations who refuse to treat them as workers and are trying to promote this illusion that they are independent contractors to avoid paying minimum wage, to avoid paying overtime, and to continue to rip off and exploit gig workers.
Right, and you have all these small companies, Kent, your mom and pop shops who are paying workers the minimum wage, paying into the state benefits. Yet these corporations, under 22, if it passes, workers would only be guaranteed $5.64 an hour. That's what would be guaranteed. And so here again, trying to get special exemptions and trying to rich billionaires paying less than the average, business owner, or playing by the rules.
So this is a really important issue, but the concern is that if they're successful at this, it will likely spread to other industries. So it's not just about gig workers. Isn't that true?
That's absolutely right. This sets a very dangerous precedent, right? They get their own special cuts, but the precedent is set, right? If they can do it, then it sets the movement for really everyone to do it and others to take advantage of this. Anytime they don't like the law, they try to change it through the ballot initiative. So it is imperative, not just for this industry, the gig economy, for all industry, and for workers across all industries, ages, race, ethnicity, to make sure that we vote no on Prop 22 this fall.
That's great, Hugo. And I do think that, especially here in California, this is a tale of two cities. We have some of the wealthiest corporations in the world residing here in California. Even during the pandemic, they are making obscene profits. And yet, the essential workers, the workers on the front lines, are getting screwed. And so this is an example of how corporations are trying to mislead the voters by jamming through an anti-worker Prop 22. And so that's why the LA County Fed is speaking out so actively to mobilize the community to vote no on Prop 22. Well, I really wanted to thank you, Hugo, for the great work you're doing at the LA Fed. I wanted to now call in Michelle, your colleague over at the LA Fed, who's been doing great work with volunteer mobilization, because in these critical 5 weeks, turnout is decisive. And I know that because there's so much attention paid on the national presidential election, many people here in Los Angeles want to help turn out the vote, especially in swing states. California is a solid blue state. There's no way that Trump is going to take California, but there's many labor and community activists here in Los Angeles that would like to have a role in deciding who the next president will be. So Michelle, tell me a little about what the LA Fed is doing with regard to mobilizing the vote in swing states.
Sure, Kent. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody, to the folks watching at home. My name is Michelle Bertinelli, and I'm the volunteer coordinator this election cycle. So what we're doing, we have a very ambitious program, but specifically on the federal level, I can dive a little bit more into that. But the way you access that is through our iPhone or Android app. We've actually created an app here for our program. You can scan these QR codes, again, for the folks following along at home, and that'll give you access to the app itself, where you register, and that way you sign up to volunteer. And then Hugo, if I can get the next slide. All right, very good. And so here's just a list of things we're going to be offering this election cycle. So we're going to be offering the opportunity to text. We're going to be making phone calls on either PDI links or through our predictive dialers. And don't worry, we'll train you all on how to do that once you guys sign up. And as Hugo mentioned, we're having outdoor phone banks as well here at the LA Labor Fed as well. And a little bit later, we're going to be offering lit drop-offs.
Thanks so much, Michelle. So what are the targets in terms of the swing states that the LA Fed is going for?
Gotcha. Yeah. So specifically for our presidential, and I'm so sorry about that, Kent, we have two opportunities. Every Wednesday and every Sundays, we are going to be calling for the Biden-Harris campaign. So on Wednesdays, we'll be working with our counterparts in Arizona to do member-to-member calls. So all you have to do to get involved is you just click on that button once you've downloaded the app and fill out your information, and a member from our team will contact you, help you get started. Same thing for Sunday. We are working with the Biden California team to make calls to different swing states. So not just Arizona, but different ones like Nevada, Wisconsin, even some Arizona and what have you. So again, you can access that through the app as well as on our website.
That's great. So I know that labor has been doing tremendous work, especially in Nevada and in Arizona, to flip these swing states from red to blue. And I know that it really makes a difference when union members reach out to other union members to try to mobilize the vote. So I was very excited to hear about how many volunteers you've already lined up so far. So tell me a little about the mobilization effort, Michelle, that you've been spearheading as the volunteer coordinator.
Sure. So, we've kicked it off last week, and we were able to get over about 120 volunteer shifts so far. And that's just been through signups on our app, as well as signups on our website. And it's been people who've been motivated, members, union members who are excited to spread the word and get these candidates, these labor candidates, elected.
That's great. So in addition to union members, though, can community activists, can students also participate in voter mobilization?
Yes, of course. And I can drop my information on the comment section in the Facebook Live. If anybody who's interested, you can contact me by emailing me, clicking on the link directly. Also drop the links to our apps as well. So you can download the app. And real quick, through the app, you have the opportunity to get things like face masks, jackets, shirts, through different actions. So if you sign up to volunteer for Biden, the Biden campaigns on Wednesdays and Sundays, you're eligible to get a PPE mask or, a shirt or a jacket, depending on how involved you get with us.
That's great. So you're offering union swag. So folks sign up to volunteer, they get these little rewards. Is that right?
It is, something a little nice to reward them for their hard work and, just get in there fast because, like I said, they're very popular. Our items, we've got people emailing me all the time saying, how do I get one of those jackets? And we're going to actually offer that to, I believe, our top 15 callers. And, we've had a lot of popularity, especially given the current political climate, for some of our federal phone banks. So stuff like Joe Biden and even Christy Smith on Thursday. Once again, you can find a menu to all of our phone banks in the link that I'll drop in the comment section on Facebook.
That's great. So people can not only do good work, they can not only mobilize their friends and neighbors to get out the vote, but they can also pick up some nice merchandise to celebrate the voter mobilization program for 2020. This is going to be a historic election, and even to have these masks and t-shirts and jackets to mark this occasion would be a great thing to celebrate. So that's great that you're providing those ways to get involved. So Michelle, if you had to make a pitch on why people should turn out, sign up, and to volunteer, what's your 30-second pitch?
This is it, guys. Just, it's been a rough year. And if you feel that way, I know a lot of folks feel a little helpless and they kind of like, do I sign a petition? Do I go to a protest? And, how do I get involved? And the answer is yes. You do all of that and you come and you sign up for the Labor Fed because we've got a great program. We've got excellent staff that are willing to train, anyone of any experience. So, we've got it all ready for you. All we need is for you to sign up and so we can get you started.
That's great, Michelle. Well, thank you for your enthusiasm and energy. Thank you for helping to coordinate the volunteers. I signed up for a shift through my union, the California Federation of Teachers. And actually, it's a lot of fun. You're calling other union members and people want to get involved. People are fed up with what's going on. Every day, we hear the news. Every day, we hear about the Republicans trying to steal the Supreme Court. We hear about Trump refusing to pay any taxes at all for years and years and years. We hear about how essential workers are being put at risk, and corporations who have more money they will ever be able to spend in 10 lifetimes say that it's not enough. They want more. And this is an opportunity where people can make change. So you have another slide on what people can do to sign up or to call in? Was there another slide to?
Is there another slide to that? Like I said, I could drop my information on the comment section on Facebook.
Okay. Great. So these are the phone bank shifts, and we really encourage you to make good use. We have 5 weeks to go to Election Day. And we have a great team of volunteers in the LA labor movement. If we had more unions across the country doing the work that the LA Fed is doing right here, we would have a new day. We would have resounding victories come November 3rd. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Hugo, for the great work that you're doing with the LA County Federation of Labor. And we wanted to now shift to a very short ad, which is running to educate our voters about another critical ballot initiative on Prop 16 on affirmative action. So please check out.
From all of us at Yes on 16, words from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a lifetime supporter of affirmative action. We are not far distant from an overtly discriminatory past, and the effects of centuries of law-sanctioned inequality remain painfully evident in our communities and schools. The stain of generations of racial oppression is still visible in our society, and the determination to hasten its removal remains vital. Move California towards equal opportunity. Vote yes on 16.
Great. Well, I'm so glad that we can lift up the spirit and the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who dedicated her life to women's equality, to affirmative action, and to making sure that the court system is used as a voice for people who do not have a voice and who have been historically underrepresented and marginalized within our society. Joining us to speak more about Prop 16 and affirmative action is my good friend Lola Smallwood-Cuevas, who was one of the founders of the Los Angeles Black Workers Center and is now deeply involved in a national network of the emergence of Black worker centers throughout the country. Welcome, Lola, and tell me why Prop 16 is a critical issue for us. Please turn off your mute and join us in the conversation.
Thank you so much, Kent, and thank you to the other speakers for such important information. And really want to appreciate all of the folks who've joined us tonight to discuss what we know is a historic election, what we know is a lot at stake, and what we know that workers make the difference. And when we mobilize our families, our communities, our union brothers and sisters, change is within reach and is certain. And so I look forward to celebrating in mid-November for a new day, not just in California, but for this country. Why Proposition 16 is important? I think, I want to start with this. 40% of the homeless population in Los Angeles is Black. 45% of our jails are Black. When we look at the water, utility, and other sectors where there are good jobs, when we look at the numbers of Black workers in those jobs, it's about 2%. So if we think about what's happening to our communities and why the conditions are such in our communities where our families are dealing with the effects of poverty, right? We're dealing with the issues of not having access to good work. And the one pathway that we have is often to prisons or the pathway into homelessness. Proposition 16 becomes important because it creates pathways for our folks to have access to quality jobs. It requires diversity. It mandates inclusion. The other side, corporations, and let's be honest, we talked about this administration. Many of the folks who were marching in Charlottesville, many of the folks who were drawing weapons and abusing and threatening protesters over these last few months, many of the values that led to the deaths of folks like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd were about folks who don't value people in our communities. And those same values are at work in terms of the decision making about who gets access to opportunities to quality jobs, who gets access to quality education, who gets access to public contracts. All of those values are wrapped up in Prop 16, which is to say that when it comes to public jobs, when it comes to public education, when it comes to public contracts, everyone, all groups should have fair and equal access. So Prop 16 is about really bringing California back into the light of repealing detrimental, regressive, anti-affirmative action policy that was put into place along with Proposition 187 back in the 90s to strip communities of color from any opportunity to be able to improve their lives through the public system. So by standing up and voting yes on Prop 16, you're standing up and saying our communities deserve opportunities, that we can no longer be overrepresented in the negatives in our community. We need to be represented in the opportunities for good jobs, for sustainable families, and for opportunities for all folks in our communities to live with dignity, respect, and justice. So Prop 16 says California will no longer be in the same community with places like Mississippi and Nebraska that have repealed affirmative action, which means there are no requirements for any type of diversity in their schools, in the workplace, in public contracting, and to say that we, in fact, in California want to be the shiny state that we need to be, that we do have a progressive vision for our state, and that means opportunities for all. So what's at stake in this election is certainly the presidential race. It's certainly Prop 15, which folks will talk about later, but we have to also make it about passing Proposition 16. And I want to say that the corporate interests have been hard at work. They're confusing voters. They're saying that this is voting for Prop 16 will somehow destroy our fight against discrimination, when in fact, Prop 16 is about ensuring that we are protected against discrimination and that we have opportunity for all. So vote yes. Don't be dissuaded by the confusing tactics that are being put in place. This is definitely about ensuring that we have a California where everyone, regardless of race and gender, have an equal shot at opportunity and wages and good jobs and quality schools. And we're not going to allow affirmative action bans in the state of California. We want to stop the systemic racism by voting yes on Prop 16.
Thank you so much, Lola, for providing some of that broader context. And I'm glad that you talked about linking, what happened back in the 90s with the anti-immigrant 187 and the anti-affirmative action Prop 209 in a very different political landscape. And what we're so excited about is now we have a vibrant labor movement that has been at the forefront of actually changing the political environment here in California, where we could even get, Prop 16 on the ballot this November. But if you could refresh our memory, what was the negative impact of Prop 209 with regard to employment and education here in the state of California and the anti-affirmative action movement?
So very, very important question. In so many aspects, there have been impacts. So when we look at this question of public contracting, for example, one of the polling outcomes that are very clear is that California voters know that groups have different roads toward opportunity and different starting points. And therefore, when it comes to public contracting, women-owned businesses, for a woman to start a business and to be successful and to have access to opportunity, her business needs to receive contracts. And what Prop 209 did was basically rob women-owned business owners of about $1 billion a year, about $26 billion lost from women and minority-owned businesses. Why is that important? Because these are businesses that hire people in our communities. These are the businesses that create opportunity. And for many of us, these are the businesses, when you look at some of the community benefits agreements and project labor agreements, these are the businesses we want to bring into unionization, right? Into strong standards. And so by making sure that women and minority-owned businesses have opportunity, we need to make sure that we say yes on Prop 16. When it comes to workers, one of the most disheartening things is to have the union work to ensure that there is an opportunity for hotels that are built in our communities, and opportunities for roads and bridges and rails to be built in our community, and to work in partnership to ensure that these jobs come to the communities hardest hit, and then have some of the contractors say they can't identify and find these workers, and say there's no requirement, right? That they have women, that they have Black workers, that they have immigrant workers in these opportunities. By passing Prop 16, we don't have to rely on the business. We don't have to then fight the boss to make sure that our agreements are fully implemented. This law sets a basic floor to say that diversity cannot be outlawed, that we have to have diversity in our workplaces. And nothing is more difficult than to drive by or be in a job site and not see diversity when we are in one of the most ethnically and racially diverse states in the world. So we want to make sure that California, that we are leading the way. And that means let's leave these regressive, dangerous, anti-affirmative action policies in the past, and let's move forward with equity mandates that ensures that communities that are hardest hit have opportunities. And then we can chip away at those statistics where we know Black and brown folks and immigrant folks are being railroaded into, like, prisons and detention centers. And let's railroad them into job training programs. Let's push them into high road opportunities. And we need the law to be on our side so that an employer does not say to us, well, no one says we have to have these groups on a job site. That is not what the union movement is about. We're about dignity and respect for all. We're about opportunities for our families. And we know that opportunity will not come if people do not have a quality job and do not have access to opportunity. So when you ask the question of what have been the impacts of Prop 209, they have been tremendous. And you and I know at UCLA, education is a way. Our children, the janitor's children, the security officer's children, they should have access to a public institution. But Kent, you and I can drive all day and we'd be hard pressed to find Latino and Black students on a UCLA campus. And that is because of Prop 209. These are public institutions that working class people are paying into to provide an education for their children, and they deserve to have an opportunity. Black, brown, Asian API community, the Japanese and Filipino and other API communities don't have access to higher education. That is a myth, and they try to pit our communities against each other. But we had a great conversation at APALA. We had a great conversation with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, where API and Black communities came together to say, no, we are voting yes on Prop 16 because our families deserve it and California's future depends on it.
Well, thank you so much for really highlighting the impact of the anti-affirmative action Prop 209 had in the state of California, because it led to more systemic racism, systemic discrimination, and a greater economic divide in terms of opportunities for communities of color right here in the state of California. I'm so glad also, Lola, that you lifted up the memory and the spirit of George Floyd, of Breonna Taylor, who's the cops who shot her in her apartment were just this week not brought up on any charges whatsoever. So I wanted you to reflect on how the Black Lives Matter movement has invigorated a national discourse on racial justice and how this links to the fight for Prop 16.
I want to say that the millions of young people older people, immigrant people, undocumented, Black folks marching in the streets has been an inspiration to me and to many of us as we're working through the pain, really, of seeing our people killed on the streets at the hands of the state. And it lifts up the central theme that we are human beings. And Reverend Lawson speaks about this, and he is a great educator of the movement, that we are all in one family, and an injustice to one is an injustice to all. And we are in what John Lewis calls good trouble, right? And I think Black Lives Matter has shown us to the what degree our lives have value. So if we can't be sleeping in our beds and be able to live and be safe, how then can we have good jobs for our children? How do we have workplaces with benefits and opportunity if we cannot live and sleep in our own beds with safety? And so what Black Lives Matter has done is to draw those parallels, right? That we have to bring and are bringing our movements together to address what it means to be a human being in this society. And certainly as workers, we have been talking about dignity and respect. And as Black people, we have been talking about the dignity and respect of our lives for generations. But now we have a new movement. We have a new level of pressure that Black Lives Matter has sparked around the world to begin to put pressure on the system to create a new kind of society where we don't have to advocate for passing such an important proposition like Prop 16 and voting yes on Prop 16, but that we have the power to create a vision for what our California, our state will look like and what the nation will look like together. And it begins with creating a sense of equity in our movements, knowing the path that Black families have experienced for generations and what they endure on a daily basis, knowing what immigrant and undocumented families are seeing and facing on a daily basis, knowing what workers are feeling and seeing and facing on a daily basis, and saying, how do we bring these movements together to create a new vision for what our society should be and really push through for a new day through our movements and convergence of movements. Because this issue of the pandemic, this issue of the pandemic is converging with this issue of anti-Black racism and white supremacy, and it's converging with the extreme capitalism and economic exploitation and inequality. And it's a level of pressure that we as community folks cannot ignore. So we need to organize. We need to use this election as an exercise on building new spaces and new commitments to come together around justice that lives not just through this November election, but justice for the type of community, the type of state that we want to see moving forward. And I think that's what Black Lives Matter has brought to us. It has brought the basic humanity and the integration and intersection of our movements to the table. And I think as the labor movement, more conversations are needed for us to see what is our role as workers. What are the conversations we need to have as union members, and what are the ways that we build a stronger, more united justice movement to win? And nothing is more important, no test and no choice is more important in our step in that direction than this upcoming November election. And in Prop 16, certainly we're looking at the top of the ballot, but we also need to do the work at the bottom of the ballot too, because Prop 16 will make the difference about who gets the COVID response dollars, right? These are public dollars. And that money will be shared and dispersed by communities based on the opportunity for all mandate. If there is no mandate, there is no guarantee that these dollars will even reach our communities, right? We talked about the right to recall. Well, who gets recalled? And if we don't pass Prop 16, there's no platform to say that Black or undocumented workers should be recalled and brought back to work. So this is why we need Prop 16, because policies matter. And I think Black Lives Matter and the movement have lifted up the intersections and the ways that these issues are intertwined. And so I'm really excited to be working with Black Lives Matter, Black worker organizing advocates in Los Angeles and San Diego and the Inland Empire, where we're building worker centers, but also a network of worker centers to be able to continue to work and build together coming out of this election.
Well, thank you so much, Lola Smallwood-Cuevas, for your energy and vision and passion, and to be such a strong advocate for Prop 16 and to call for racial justice at this critical time. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will absolutely look forward to continuing to track your work in the months and years to come. We're now going to shift into the final proposition that we'll be addressing, Prop 15, Schools and Communities First. And I want to lead off with a short ad for Prop 15.
Quality public schools make a better California for all of us.
Makes a better California.
For a better future.
In the state of California,
Public schools are already suffering.
we are dead last in investing in our schools when it's one of the wealthiest states in the country. And so then
Teaching is becoming more challenging.
We're about to lose our school librarian, and that's difficult.
class size matters.
If we can fix the inequities in our schools, then we could really start to work on moving that out into the community.
We want to have communities that are healthy and thriving. We have to be able to invest in our young people.
All of our schools can be quality options if we get the appropriate funding.
For years, large corporations have avoided paying their fair share of property taxes, while our students pay the price. The Schools and Communities First initiative finally forces big business to pay their fair share of property taxes. Join California educators in putting schools and communities first.
I want to make sure that every student gets the education that they deserve.
So tonight we've heard about the No on Prop 22 campaign, the Yes on Prop 16 campaign, and to join us to talk about the Yes on Prop 15, Schools and Communities First, is my good friend, Monica Thammarath, who is the national president of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance and a leader within the California Teachers Association, and someone who has recently moved back to California. So we are so happy to have you back in California, and we are so excited about the work you are doing to mobilize support for Prop 15. Why is Prop 15 important to the people of the state of California, Monica?
Well, I feel like, well, first of all, thank you so much, Kent, for having me, and everyone for highlighting the importance of this election. You know, Prop 15, it is the fight of our generation. It is an opportunity for us to systematically change and reinvest in our schools and communities. You know, I think a lot of folks think that right now is not the time to do this, but now more than ever, we've seen what the inequities in our communities have been going through, and that's why we are definitely prioritizing schools and communities first and a yes vote for Prop 15.
So that's great that you're working on this critical initiative. Tonight, you're kind of wearing two hats, and as the national president of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, APALA has also been doing a lot of support for Prop 16, support for Prop 15, but has also done a lot of work to mobilize the API vote, the Asian Pacific Islander vote here in California. So what is APALA doing to mobilize the vote?
Well, you know, APALA's power really comes in how we organize at the intersection between workers' issues and issues that impact Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. I really want to give a huge shout out to a lot of our Asian American and Pacific Islander community groups who have been working around the clock, around the year on getting our communities involved in political and civic engagement. And really organizations like API Force, APEN, Chinese Progressive Association, Wong Innovating Politics, Khmer Girls in Action. I invite all of labor to join these community organizations to really tap into the power of the API vote. You know, on the national level, APALA did a quick shift into organizing virtually. We tested a bunch of tools early on, and what's been really great is that we've been able to support smaller community organizations that didn't have that savvy with technology to get their virtual house parties, virtual text banking, virtual phone banking, up and running. So we've been able to really do that. And as Kent mentioned, we're testing something new this year by mobilizing and coordinating all of our chapters in California for Prop 16. We know, as Lola mentioned, Asian Americans have been used as a wedge against our Black and Brown siblings in our state and in our country, and we refuse to do that. We refuse to be used as a wedge, and so we are organizing a strong progressive voice to also mobilize for Yes on 16.
That's great to see the intersectionality of this movement and how you are linking the issues in moving forward. But shifting back now to your California Teachers Association hat, I know that California has suffered for years and years and years as a consequence of the Proposition 13, which have transferred huge amounts of wealth from our public schools to the wealthiest corporations and wealthiest individuals. So what has been the impact of Prop 13, and why do we need to change it?
Well, in short, I think folks have said it before, this property tax loophole has made it so that our state is the 5th largest economy in the world, but the 39th state in the country in per pupil spending. The money is there. We as workers know that we've helped create this wealth, but it's not going back to our schools and communities. It's going somewhere else. Our members, educators, are really into facts and figures. So I'm going to drop it into the link, but CTA actually created this SCF funding calculator so that you could actually look up how much your school district is estimated to reclaim back if Prop 15 passes. And in LAUSD alone, it's estimated that you'll reclaim back $340 million a year if we pass Prop 15. I'm really proud to be back in California to work at CTA. And this fight for our schools and our communities is really one of the reasons why I moved back. I'm 34 years old. I graduated college in 2008 during the last economic recession. My entire life as a student and as a worker has been in this divestment in our communities. The opportunity to come home and be a part of this fight for a California where there aren't potholes, where we have firefighters to fight our fires, where kids could go to 6th grade camp, where we could teach ethnic studies. That's the kind of California that I thought was worth fighting for and coming home to fight for.
We were so happy to have you with us during the 6-day UTLA strike in January of 2019. And so many of the demands really resonated with the public in terms of the need for social workers, the need for librarians, the need for nurses at the school site. So how would Prop 15 address some of these inequities that still exist within the public schools?
Yeah, Prop 15 is run by a really broad coalition of not just workers like CTA and SEIU, but also community organizations, parents, and students. And what we learned from the strike that UTLA led was that we have to fight with our parents and communities around issues that we all agree on. And I know that when we were going through budget cuts, counselors, nurses, librarians, those were the first ones to go, but those were also the first ones that our communities needed. And so, winning back Prop 15, it's going to mean that we get to, actually fund some of those demands that we made and some of those wins, right, that we made in our contract negotiations.
Monica, in these critical 5 weeks before the election day, some of the wealthiest corporations in the state of California are going to be funneling millions to launch a disinformation campaign against Prop 15. And they're going to claim that everybody's property taxes will go up if we pass Prop 15. So what is the Yes on Prop 15 campaign doing to anticipate this corporate-backed disinformation campaign?
Yeah, we knew that this was going to happen, right? The opposition is funding their campaign 3-to-1, outspending us. And they are doing it with fear tactics and misinformation and just straight up lies. And trying to stoke fear into people. But right now is not the time to shrink and shy away from the bold California that we all hope comes out of this pandemic. You know, one thing that we're doing, it's just the basics, Kent. We're calling our members. You know, we have this enormous goal of contacting at least 80% of our members, member-to-member phone calls. And they've actually been amazing, right? We know educators have been struggling. So we really are calling them to see how they're doing and how they feel about whether their district has the funding to deal with this crisis, but also to deal with what happens afterwards. So phone banking. We're also doing handwritten postcards. This is something I invite you all to do. We're sending postcards to our members to send to their family and friends. And events like this that just remind folks about what's at stake. And also, you know, don't listen to that TV. This is Monica calling from your union telling you really the facts, right? So I think that that's how we're going to win this.
So Monica, what are the ways that people in these last critical 5 weeks can get involved in the APALA voter mobilization programs or in the California Teachers Association or labor mobilization to support Yes on Prop 15?
Yeah, well, if we're holding text banks in APALA every night, especially if you speak an Asian language, we're texting folks in Asian languages. We're also calling folks in language as well. I know that UTLA is doing this really awesome phone bank. I could drop it into the chat. Please join UTLA in their phone bank, not just for Prop 15, Prop 16, everything above my screen, but also for some really crucial school board elections that they're really fighting for. And if you're comfortable, you know, I know that many folks are also organizing some safe and social distance car caravans. I love that the LA Labor Fed is doing outdoor phone banking. Please just sign up. 5 to 7 every day. I'm sure you'll find a phone bank to plug into, and maybe I'll see you at one of them.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Monica Thammarath from the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance and the California Teachers Association. We really thank you for your hard work and leadership, and we hope that we can have a lot to celebrate on November 3rd on Election Day. So thank you for joining us. As I said, we have 5 weeks to go before Election Day. And I know that these are challenging times. People are suffering in the midst of this pandemic. People are feeling depressed in the daily barrage of news from the White House, news from the pandemic. And yet there are concrete, tangible things that we can do to change the course of history in these next 5 weeks. So please, if any of you have some time to spare, reach out to Hugo Romero and Michelle Bertinelli at the LA County Federation of Labor and get involved and volunteer. Reach out to Lola Smallwood-Cuevas from the UCLA Labor Center and her work with the Black Worker Center to get involved. Reach out to Monica Thammarath and the California Teachers Association and APALA. There are lots of ways that you can get involved in these next critical 5 weeks. So I wanted to thank once again Citlali Chavez, Veronica Gannat, Sylvia Vasquez, and Justin McBride for helping out with today's Labor's Voice. I wanted to thank all of the outstanding speakers who joined us. Please get out to vote, turn out to vote, and volunteer to make sure that we will be celebrating victory on November 3rd, 2020, and join us for the next Labor's Voice. Good night.